Amanda, what do you think about the state of potholes in this country? Even Rod Stewart's got to fix his own, otherwise he's going to wreck his Ferrari.
Yeah, potholes are a real problem throughout the country, and it's partly to do with the fact that there has been a massive lack of spending on the roads. Councils have had to just patch them up rather than actually address the serious underlying problem that's causing the pothole in the first place. But if, as a road user, you do incur damage as a result of a pothole, you can go to the council and actually claim for compensation and repair, but it's quite a lengthy process and it can take an awful lot of time and bother, and many people have got no idea how to go about doing it. So yeah, potholes are a real problem and I can't see any way out of them soon.
What do they do to cars, Amanda?
So the first thing they do is they can damage your tyres. So your tyre you can have a puncture, or you can just damage the sidewall of your tyre. In serious cases, they can actually do some suspension damage as well. So you can end up having some seriously costly repairs to your car. And in the case of a Ferrari, obviously, because the car is going to be going down into a pothole, you can actually end up with damage under the car as well. And that's not to mention the damage that can happen to bicycles, motorcycles and other two-wheeled devices that use the road, because of course if they hit a pothole, that can actually be really serious, with somebody coming off their bike and heaven forbid having a really serious accident.
And Amanda, is the issue the repatching of potholes? Do roads need to be completely resurfaced?
Well, in part they do, yes, but the big problem is, of course, the British weather. We love to complain about the weather. So what we have is spells of huge amounts of water, then we get freezing, then it gets very warm. And so this just causes the road surface to degenerate. And when it gets icy, the water obviously, when it freezes, it expands, and that then breaks the road surface up as well. So there are two problems. We really need to resurface our roads properly and do the job properly, but we also need to fix the weather.
Well, yes, of course, that's always a factor. I'm delighted to welcome Senior Lecturer in Sustainable Construction and Climate Change, John Grant. Great to have you with us, John. Do you think we have underestimated the importance of roads in this country?
There is since the 1990s, we've established that the more roads you build, the more cars you have. So there is a dilemma here in that the levels of congestion are causing real harm to our people in the UK, to the point of the pollution killing people. I mean, a good number here in Sheffield, the estimate's 500 a year. So building more roads will, without an investment in public transport, without an attempt to get cars off the road, will just inevitably, because people are smart, you've got better roads, you're going to get in your car and you're going to travel from A to B, and you're going to live places where you think you can travel to work rapidly because you've got a new road, and that connection has to be broken if we're to come out of both the local air quality issue and then the wider issue of carbon emissions, because transport is about 35% of that issue as well.
But John, is air pollution a short-term factor given the adoption of electric vehicles, hybrids and cleaner petrol and diesel engines?
Well, if the congestion goes up, it's always going to be a problem. Even electrics have problems with emissions from their tyres and brakes. And really, we need to be trying to move, in the cities at least, to a more car-free approach, which is a much healthier, a much more open, a much more diverse sort of experience in those cities, which will give people who need to travel in a car better opportunity, rather than a congested, choked up city where nobody can use that. So, there's obviously going to be people and companies that need to use the roads, and at the moment they're unable to function effectively because it's just choked up with cars generally. But people have to get in their cars if they've got awful public transport. The evidence is that £1 spent on a bus or a bus route will give £3 worth of improvement to that local economy. This is cold economics here. Yes, have roads that don't have potholes. Of course, we don't want roads with potholes, but we have to disconnect those roads from general car use, or, well, we're done.
Delighted to welcome Steve Masters to the programme, Green Party councillor and environmental campaigner. Hello, Steve. Look, Rod Stewart, the rock superstar, has had to repair his own road. Shouldn't we fix the roads we've got before building more rail?
We should be investing in an integrated transport network on a local level, and as John has said, in encouraging people to get out of cars as much as possible. And one way of ensuring that the roads are suitable for those road users that are left and need to use it is by repairing the existing road network to a standard that benefits all road users. As Amanda said, roads aren't used by cars, motorcyclists, cyclists, and and the hazards that face car drivers are exacerbated and somewhat more dangerous for vulnerable road users like cyclists. So we need to work towards a integrated local transport system. And I think we should be looking and reassessing the national road building scheme, and we can make lots of cost savings that can be invested in those local transport systems and repairing the existing road network that we have. And as a local councillor, potholes are one of the main complaints that I get from my local residents when they're interacting with the council. They'll see a pothole. And they may not realise that it has to get to a certain standard and depth and area before it can even be assessed by a contractor to repair. And very often those repairs are almost temporary. And as Amanda pointed out, with the climatic conditions that we have in this country, the weather gets underneath the temporary or the repairs, and you're back to square one in a number of years. So I think you've got a panel here who are fairly well agreeing that the situation that we find ourselves in at the moment, and especially with rising fuel prices, people are going to be looking for alternatives away from cars. And already there's anecdotal evidence, certainly locally around the south of England, that people are already carpooling to reduce the number of car journeys that they're making on their own because of the impact of the fuel crisis. So. That kind of adaptation will happen inevitably.
Yeah. Steve, your image is freezing slightly on the screen. You've either had Botox or it's your broadband. We'll come back to you in just a moment. I'd like to come back, if I can, to Amanda Stretton. Amanda, what about the economy? Because I've always understood that more roads and more people in cars is a sign of a growing, thriving economy.
Well, of course it is. And as an island nation, all of our goods and services are actually delivered to us via the road in the most part as well. But we are an island nation, so where are we actually going to build all of these roads? We have limited space. We certainly have limited space in our towns and cities. And as everybody has correctly identified, we actually need a much better integrated transport system. There is a time and a place for everybody to use a car as and when necessary. But when you're going into a town or a city, there should be alternatives that people can use that are much easier and much better integrated. I moved out into the country, and no sooner had I bought a house than they cancelled all my local buses. Now, that isn't a sensible policy when you're trying to encourage people into a cleaner, greener society and to try and help people to get out of their cars. I have no other options here.
What about personal choice, though, Amanda, as well? Many people enjoy the convenience and luxury of being in their own car. And actually, if we completely destroy our car infrastructure, we're going to affect the car industry, which is a big employer and a big contributor to our economy.
Now, I would put my hands up here. I am not in favour of banning the infrastructure totally. I enjoy my car. And in actual fact, during COVID, we saw a resurgence of people actually using their cars because, of course, they were choosing not to use public transport because they felt safer in their cars as well. And that's why we, at the very beginning of the COVID pandemic, we saw a steep rise in people buying second, maybe third, or what we like to call station cars for doing those short commutes because they wanted to stay out of public transport. So, I agree, public choice does play a huge part.
Yeah, how do you see this going? What do you think the government's focus is going to be in terms of our roads going forward, Amanda? Do you think we're going to get more roads, more motorways and more investment in potholes?
Well, we've seen a bit of a U-turn with the government's motorway policy with regards to smart motorways, which I think has been broadly welcomed because I'm not sure anybody was truly in favour of those. But I think what we're actually really suffering with at the moment is just a chronic lack of spending on our transport system, whether it be roads, whether it be our train, buses, public transport, whatever it may be. We've got an awful lot of people who need to move around, which is why we see such major congestion on our roads and in our cities. And clearly, there just simply isn't the infrastructure there at the moment for people to efficiently move around.
I hear what you're saying, Amanda, but I think we need more roads because people, especially in rural communities, don't have a choice, or maybe they don't want to wait an hour for the next bus. And this is about personal choice, surely.
I'm not sure, though, that more roads is necessarily going to fix that problem. I mean, I live in a rural community, and I'm not sure that more roads is going to make any difference. I actually have got less of a problem with traffic and more of a problem with lack of infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, what really bothers me, going back to you, Steve Masters, are temporary roadworks. Those are the bane of my life. Do you think the government should crack down on those?
I do believe that there needs to be some more coordination in the maintenance of roads. It's highlighted that there's very often a road dug up one week, repaired, and then somebody else will come along. And there are moves towards that. I know. Going back to the local transport, Amanda is correct. More roads. You don't need more roads in areas of outstanding natural beauty, such as West Berkshire. What you need is a more affordable, a sustainable public transport network. And that's what people want. And you say it's about personal choice. If people are offered alternatives, they will make the choices that work for them, both in convenience and economically. And, and as I've mentioned, economically, we're all going to be stretched over the next few months and years with the current situation, in the economy. So, those supports, and it's ironic. I'm up in Salford at the moment in a tower block, and I've got worse internet than I had when I was up in a tree for 3 months in Buckinghamshire, fighting against a gross overspending on HS2, and that's going to have an impact on the biodiversity and the countryside. So I do apologise about the internet, but we should be getting towards the conversation.
Yeah. Steve, very briefly, do you think we should scrap HS2?
Absolutely, 100%. It's, we need to invest in the existing network that we have on the rail system and making sure that we've got interconnectivity on local levels and improving the rolling stock. It's a massive project, and and we've seen over the last 2 years, working and commuting habits have changed dramatically. And nobody, wants to spend, long time travelling between massive cities, Birmingham, Manchester, in the city. And if you need to get there 20 minutes earlier, set off.
Yeah, John Grant, briefly, should we scrap HS2?
For the most part, yes, because what I want is a good east-west connectivity between Liverpool and Hull, which includes Manchester, Sheffield, and Leeds. And what HS2 was going to do was allow all this wonderful skills and people to flow south far too effectively, rather than trying to nurture the very great potential that we've got up here. But also I'd like to point out that back in the day, Postal Service used to offer bus service when we used to have 2 deliveries a day. There was a postal bus morning. It's a long time ago now, but the idea that we expect deliveries now to our homes via Amazon and such like, and other providers exist, that maybe the thought here in the rural areas is to try and combine services, rather than having a dedicated bus service, maybe some kind of taxi stroke delivery service, postal service stroke sort of bus service could be organised, because the people in the rural areas are really, really good at mixing their services, combining pubs with post offices and the like.
It sounds like communism to me, I've got to say. The removal of personal choice, which has been a flavour of the last 2 years of public policy. But look, it's all about opinions. My thanks to John Grant, Steve Masters and Amanda Stretton.